Oh, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hashtag Sports. My name is Joe. Wait, that's not it. Hold on a second. That's not it. Yo, what's up, Down Mafia? Oh, that's not it either. Damn it. How do I open my shows?
Yo, you did not tell me this is how you were starting this thing.
Why would I tell you?
This is a roast?
Takes all the fun out of it. Let's start it the way we only know how to start it here at Hashtag Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hashtag Sports. Anthony already jumping in the chat. It's good to see you guys on this quarantine edition of Buffalo Bills Talk. I decided to enlist the services of these fine gentlemen to help me talk Buffalo Bills with you guys. I know you guys have been starving for it. A lot of things have been going on. We had a little bit of a lull, but there's always a little bit of Bills news to talk, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm joined by these two gentlemen, Joe Sharpe from Billievers Talk, and his Twitter handle is going to be scrolling below your screen, as well as Dan Mitchell, the king of the non-Mafia. Gonna give you guys everything you need as well. Joe, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing great, man. I see the chat already lighting up, guys. How you doing? Glad to be here. I'm excited. I always enjoy these collabs, so I'm really excited to get on here.
Absolutely, no doubt. And kick it over to Mr. Don Mafia. Dan, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Oh, dude, I'm doing fantastic. You know, I'm just living the quarantine life right here. Down in South Carolina, let's be real. But yeah, once again, dude, I'm absolutely pumped to be here. I want to talk some Buffalo Bills just to keep my mind off of all this this chaos, and hopefully I won't drink as many beers.
It usually goes the other way with it, though.
Normally,
yeah,
typically.
So a lot of new news coming out with the Buffalo Bills. Going on. The biggest news though is the first round pick, Dan. And I want to start with you as we start this off. Bills don't have a first round pick. There's been a few times in the history of the Buffalo Bills that they haven't had a first round pick. I heard you got a list of names. What are some of the names when the Bills do not have a first round pick? Who's their first, second round pick?
Yeah, so this is interesting because we were talking about this prior to when we went live. But a Bills fan on Twitter, and he actually has a YouTube channel as well. His name is Vicious Sid. I'm not sure if you guys ever heard of him, but he ended up putting out this really interesting stat. The last couple of times that the Bills have not had a first-round pick, in 2015, they picked Ronald Darby. In 2005, Roscoe Parrish. 98, Sam Cowart. 89, Don Beebe. And 88, Thurman Thomas. So if history repeats itself, and then once you couple the fact that Brandon Beane has basically just been swinging his balls of steel around this entire offseason, then luck is in our corner. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a guy that he really wants, B's going to go get him. Joe, what do you think about those picks?
Well, the previous picks, yeah. I mean, like Dan was talking about, and like we talked about before live here, between that history going in the Buffalo Bills' way and Brandon Beane's history with the draft, the past 2 years, I think that we're in good making in this. And like we've all been talking about, like what are you going to get at 22 better than Stephon Diggs? You just not.
Yeah, I mean, I was, as far as losing the first round pick and getting Stephon Diggs, I really think that the wide receiver that you would have gotten, he would have had to acclimate himself to the pro game, and right. A lot of those things that Stephon Diggs already knows how to do. That's basically what you traded it for, and I don't think you were getting much higher than maybe like 18 or 17. And with all those guys projected to be off the table by then, I like the deal for Diggs. The thing that cripples me every time when he said about the not a first round pick, and he brought up 2005. So who was the 2005 pick that the Bills took in the second round, Dan? Can you repeat that one more time?
It was Roscoe Parrish.
Roscoe Parrish. Did you know that the Bills didn't? 2004 is when they got Lossman. Is when they traded an extra first-round pick to move up and get Lossman. In 2005 was when Rodgers started tumbling down the board. And I'm like, oh, God, if they just didn't trade for J.P. Lossman, they would have had a first-round pick. It would have had Rodgers, hopefully. Oh, my God.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about those years that Dan was mentioning, and I think about the year prior where we made the mistake of trading our first-round pick. At least this year, I don't feel like we made a mistake getting rid of our first-round pick. I feel like we did the right thing.
Well, because it usually happens on draft day when there's probably so many other guys that you want. And, we got people coming in the chat. Let me see. Could you see a safety, Antoine Winfield Jr., whose dad's Antoine Winfield Sr., played in Buffalo and Minnesota? A lot of people go with the family vibe. People want everyone to draft Diggs, the cornerback, and they also want Antoine Winfield Jr. It's pretty interesting. But it's Bills fam all around, man. That's basically how it works.
Absolutely.
So Given that and what we've known and what we've seen so far in this offseason with Brandon Beane, as Dan so poetically puts it, slinging his junk around. What are the grades? I'm going to start with you, and I'll kick it to Dan. Joe, what are the grades that you would give Brandon Beane in this front office based on the moves that they've made in this free agency in this offseason?
Well, if you're asking me the most, I think a lot of people are going to talk about Stephon Diggs as like the biggest move that he's made so far this offseason. And it's been a big move, but I want to talk about these restructuring of the contracts, right? Talk about Patrick Marco, the most recent one, Tyler Croft, and you talk about Starla Tuile.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, to me, Brandon Beane gets a great grade this offseason. We're trimming the fat a little bit. We're trimming the money where we can, and saving money for those big contracts. And that's why I would give Brandon Beane like a B. The only thing I want to see Brandon Beane do is, and they could be doing this behind closed doors, we have no idea, is explore those big time deals like the Tre'Davious White, the other big deals that, big players that we have to re-sign.
And so a B is a little low, I think, Joe, huh?
Oh, he's gonna start throwing stuff at him.
Well, I mean, again, yeah. you like a lot of the moves he's made, but let's not act like this has been a completely flawless offseason. I mean, again, we're looking at Tre'Davious White, and we're saying we are re-signing him, right? Like he is the centerpiece.
God. Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, like those would probably be the two moves that I wish that he would have made, specifically actually going ahead and making that extension to Trey. They didn't extend Milano, obviously, right? We've only extended Poyer. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Those two were the ones that I was really anticipating him to extend before Poyer. I was thinking that Beane was kind of sort of just let Poyer be like, all right, dude, well, sorry, worst case scenario, we'll just pick up Duggar in the draft. But as far as his season, as far as his offseason is concerned, I'm going to have to go an A- because no one's perfect, obviously. Because of this reason alone, going into this offseason, there was clear needs that the Buffalo Bills needed to fill these specific holes. And now, like, there's really no concrete needs that the Bills have right now. Now we're in a scenario where we can go into the draft and pick the best player available and just upgrade to where we are right now. I mean, we ended up letting Shaq Lawson walk, and we ended up finding a way cheaper deal in Mario Addison, who, in retrospect, has been way more productive on a way cheaper contract, and then also filling in those holes that Lorenzo Alexander is leaving as well with those linebackers we ended up picking up. So I'm very confident in this team, and the draft hasn't even started. Not unless Beane picks like a punter like during the second round, then I'm gonna just give him an A-.
That's pretty good. Yeah. As someone who is used to giving out grades on a fairly normal basis, I'm gonna I'll give Beane and the coaching staff a B+ on all that. And I agree with both gentlemen's assessment here. I graded a little bit differently in the fact is, okay, did you replace what you lost? And, right. Dan already alluded to it. You got Mario Addison, you got Jefferson, you got Vernon Butler. You got guys, rosters are at 90 now. You can play around. You can do a lot of different things right now. Did you replace what you lost? Absolutely they did. Did you fill holes that you needed to fill? Back to these two gentlemen's points once again. Yeah, you filled holes that you needed to fill. Now, teams don't know where you're going to go in the draft. As Dan alluded to, you can go best player available. You can do whatever you want. You can shuffle around picks to get this guy or that guy or anything like that. Okay, and are you ahead of need? This is the third thing. Are you ahead of the positional need and things that you have? Okay, now everyone we talked about how he restructured contracts. Well, I think those are apples and oranges. I don't think the restructuring of contracts and the extension of Poyer was necessarily for the new free agents that he brought in. I think those were necessary for the contracts of Milano, Dawkins, and Trey White that you're going to have to give eventually. So I think not this year really paying dividends, but next year. And currently the Buffalo Bills, they're $22 million under the cap right now with, I believe, if I want to, let me go to the draft and I'll show, let's go in free agency in the cap space. I just want to pull this up for everybody just so I get my numbers right. I don't want to deter hashtag Nation. And for all of you, thanks for joining us tonight. So the Buffalo Bills currently have 64 players under contract with $22 million under the cap. So they're in that spot where, okay, their draft class, if you take away that first round pick now, their draft class will cost anywhere in the range of $7-8 million now. So if they happen to sign all the picks that they have, we know Bean's a mover and a shaker now. He's going to be doing a lot of different things at draft time. But let me start with Dan, and I'll kick it back over to Joe. The likelihood, we talk about Bean, doing what he does. What's the likelihood that they'll be able to get back into the first round?
Well, as much as I think that it would be interesting, like we were talking about before we ended up starting like this live stream itself, it's unlikely, number one, because the only reason why I think that a first round was absolutely necessary was just to go up and get a receiver, a true number one. And say that you look at it, we basically drafted Stephon Diggs at 22 this year.
Yeah.
This is basically how it works out. So I just don't foresee us having enough capital or frankly the need to draft back up in the first round by itself, because like realistically, like say for example that we still want a big playmaker from the receiver room. This draft class is so damn deep that we don't necessarily need to make that move.
Yeah.
So while I guess it could be possible, I mean, say that like we gave them like our second and a fourth and maybe like a 2021 third or something like that, then I guess, but I just don't foresee Bean doing it. But then again, I did not see Bean, sort of growing a spine and then getting Stephon Diggs this offseason either. So who knows?
You just gave him an A-, and now you're criticizing for that having a spine, man.
Hey, listen, he earned that A-.
He earned the A-.
He earned that A- from that move alone.
Now, to me, getting into this question, what's exciting to me is day 2. Remember, the Buffalo Bills still have 7 draft picks, and that might not mean much trying to get into day 1, because I agree with Dan. If we want to trade back into day 1, we'd either A, have to trade a player, or B, we'd have to trade 2021 draft capital. I'm never a fan of trading future capital for an unknown draft pick. Sammy Watkins, 2014, I hate you. But anyway.
I don't run a full route tree.
Yeah,
Google T. Higgins.
It's all right. But anyway, the excitement for me is to see if Brandon Beane tries to move up back earlier into the second round. Remember last year we moved up earlier in the second round to get Cody Ford. So I think there might be a possibility there. But as far as a first round pick, I put the possibility of that like 5%, if not less.
And so what we could do is just send over a 7th round pick and Jason Kroom to the Texans, and Bill O'Brien would probably buy.
They'd probably go for it.
He'd give us J.J. Watt.
They don't have a first round pick anymore, though. So.
He'd give us J.J. Watt. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's funny because I just looking at the chat. There's a lot of talk here about Kroom. Kroom's always been a tweener to me. Obviously, we haven't seen him for a year. He's been doing what he does, I guess. I'm not going to say what the comment section has been saying about Jason Kroom. We got Dan here handing out beers to all of hashtag Nation. He just gave one to Elliot. It's pretty amazing. But at least we can use our hen dog. At least we can use our Sammy Watkins / Fitzpatrick gear again. So you can just take the nameplate off, put Diggs on it. You'll be all good.
There you go.
But
there you go.
I know we could joke about it. We can just for a second. Let's just talk about the idea. Okay, of Jason Kroom. All right. Before he went out for an entire season, he was kind of that tweener guy where you didn't know if he was a wideout, you didn't know if he was a tight end. He was a guy that, developed a little bit of chemistry with Allen before he went out. Do you realistically think that the Bills didn't make a big push for tight ends this offseason, A, because they drafted 2 last year, they restructured Croft, and they see something in Jason Kroom that we just frankly haven't seen for an entire year? I'll start with Joe, and I'll kick it over to Dan.
I mean, we have to trust the coaching staff, right? If they haven't done something, they went after Greg Olsen, and the more you think about it now, you think that Greg Olsen was just kind of see the interest, if the interest is mutual, which it was according to reports, because of the Carolina background of Greg Olsen, but he signs with the Seattle Seahawks for what I always thought was about $1 to $2 million too much than what I hoped the Bills would spend for him. So I'm happy that the Bills didn't get him. But yeah, I've never felt much of a need at tight end as long as, and I talk about this a lot with some of you on Twitter when you guys give me a hard time for one of my comments, which is fine. You do have to trust this team, this coaching staff, and this front office that they know what they're doing. And it's weird to do that because as Bills fans, we're just not used to that. But yeah, you have to trust that they saw something. Same thing with when you talk about Duke Williams, you have to trust that they saw something in him to make him active for the playoff game. And Christian Wade, everyone wants to talk about Christian Wade. You have to trust that the coaching staff knows what they're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got anything else for Jason Kroom there, Dan?
And so really, as far as the Bills, going out and trying to find a new tight end to complement Knox or to complement Sweeney, I think that soon as when Hooper really went off the market, then right in my mind, there was no tight end that was on the market that I foresaw being going after.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we could have went after an Eric Ebron, but I think at the end of the day that another wide receiver was much more imperative than a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've been reading on this draft class in 2020, the tight end class is not too impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having a strong feeling that the front office, the coaching staff is sort of having a lot of optimism in the development of Knox and Sweeney. And hopefully we have something there just as long as he can, sort of work on, sort of just being able to catch balls, which is good. So
giggity. Yeah, giggity. I was thinking of the possibility of be quiet, Joe. I was just thinking of the possibility of Kroom. He's a guy who didn't accrue a season last year, so he's going to be, I believe, don't quote me on this, I think he's going to be an exclusive rights free agent next year, which means you sign him for league minimum, you have him if you want him, you could kick the tires on him this year. He's free to cut. He's only costing. He's not even in the top 51 cutoff. Overthecap.com does the top 51 cutoff. Well, it's the top 53 now, and it's going to be the top 55 because it's a new CBA. He's underneath the 51 cutoff. So I mean, you had guys last year that were coming into the season that weren't even on the 51 cutoff that contributed to your team. So yeah, I mean, you can kick the tires on him, see what you got. I mean, you got, as of right now, you got Smith, you got Sweeney, you got Croft.
Shit, we still have Smith. I forgot.
Yeah, the lineman.
Oh, you didn't see the penalty flag? They just threw one. Yeah.
he just got called for holding again.
He just got called for another one.
That mutant.
He just got called for holding. Right now.
He just got called. Another thing going in with that, if we could shift away from Kroom, is a lot of people are talking about the tackle position. Cody Ford, a lot of people are saying slide him down. And the two names that keep coming up that are pretty funny to me are Jason Peters and, who's the other lineman Corey Glenn.
Yeah.
So I don't know about a reunion with those guys. Those guys are at the age right now where you kind of slide them down into guard because they don't have the kick step that they used to in their younger years. I don't know if those two guys are options, and I really think that this coaching staff is completely sold on Deion Dawkins at the left-hand side, and then Cody Ford's going to be your right tackle. That's what I foresee because this coaching staff feels they can coach a lot of people up. OG Bobby Johnson was able to work miracles last year with the offensive line that was just kind of thrown together. So, Dan, what is your thoughts on if the Buffalo Bills, I'll phrase it this way. What are your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills? Do they have to address the offensive tackle position in the draft, and do they have to address it early? Let me ask you that.
So to be honest with you, just the way that free agency is really shaping up, I think that two needs that are far more important, in my opinion, is going to be a secondary running back and a cornerback. As much as I'm not necessarily agreeing that this is going to be a good idea, I have a funny feeling that we are going to be seeing a very similar, so the offensive line from 2019 going into 2020. I really, really wanted Beluga. I really wanted that guy. I really wanted him to sort of take that over, make sure that he could take Ford's position and then move Ford over to guard. But as much as I see it as a necessity, I just think not unless we can find an absolute steal. I wouldn't mind if we could bring back Cordy Glenn. I mean, I'm sure that we can get him cheap. And then maybe he might be able to have a bounce back year, say that he would be able to, stay healthy and be able to play more than 3.5 games a season. But it's for some reason, I just have a feeling while I think that there is a need, I just don't want to get my hopes up that we're going to see any type of upgrades or changes to our offensive line from 2019.
Oh, Joe, what do you think about that?
The last comment, not so. I mean, I was about to say I agree with Dan, but then he said that last comment, and then it just throws me off a little bit. But
so sorry, man.
Yeah, it's okay. I was on board. I was like, yeah, Dan, tell him.
Yo, Joe, we've been beefing, bro.
No, I agree with Dan. Like, we're not. I don't think we're going free agency for Cody Glenn, Jason Peters, or anybody else. I want to go back to something Dan said earlier, actually, which brings this point to focus is. We can draft best player available, right? So let's say we get to the second, third, fourth round and there's a great tackle available. Well, maybe one of the reasons why Brandon Beane moved up last year to get a guy like Ford is because he knew he could move him to guard or tackle. So let's say, I'm a huge fan of Ben Barch of St. John's. I think he's a good tackle. Let's use the draft as the eye test to see what Buffalo Bills plan to do with Cody Ford as far as moving him to guard or tackle. But like Dan said earlier, if we can draft best player available, and the best player available is a tackle, move him into guard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I would have said that 100% with if they still had their 22nd overall pick, because I think that the draw for quarterbacks, wide receivers, the skill positions would have pushed so many tackles down the board. I think it was the O.J. Howard draft. The first offensive lineman that was taken at 20 by the Broncos. And, Beane definitely saw something in Cody Ford. I mean, he ended up trading up, and in Carolina, with a couple picks later, took Greg Little. So he might have thought that Carolina was eyeing Cody Ford and had to get ahead of Carolina because they ended up taking, Greg Little. And Greg Little didn't have like a very good season down in Carolina at all. You know what I mean? So he struggled quite a bit. So kudos to Beane for picking that out and being able to see, how this guy's going to do. And the fact is, when you look at the offensive line, the guys that they brought in, they're guys on 1 or 2 year prove-it deals. This was last year. They brought guys on 1 or 2 year prove-it deals. There are guys that can move all over the line. You bring in Bates. I mean, everyone forgot about Bates because, I mean, he's just not a very popular name. But the guy can play all over the line. He plays from center to tackle. He could fill in for you in a pinch. You got Feliciano who can play center and guard. You got Long that can play center and guard. You got all these other guys. I believe that Dawkins could play on the right side, and he has played on the right side, very minimal. But he could if you needed him to. I mean, one of your options was a rookie in Cody Ford last year and a 35-year-old Ty Nsekhe. I mean, those are your options for right tackle. And you know what? The Bills and Bobby Johnson, they made it work. Even though they were throwing all these parts together like the island of misfit toys. They were just putting them out there and saying, okay, you guys do what you got to do. And what was the result? Mitch Morse plays. John Feliciano plays great. Quentin Spain doesn't give up a sack the entire year. Dawkins has his best year. And, Ford struggled. He's going to do that. He's a rookie. He's going to struggle a little bit. So I am of the proponent that I believe that Ford grades out so much better as a guard than a tackle. But then you got Feliciano and Spain there. Like, what are you going to do with those guys? What happens to those guys when that happens? So, Hashtag Nation, if you're in the chat, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you go down and follow Joe and Dan on their channels. You guys probably already are following them. Alan Strang comes in the chat. He says, what about Waddle? Like, we talked about him this week.
Yeah.
I'm so intrigued. Let me start with Dan. I'll go to Joe. I am so intrigued at LaAdrian Waddle. Not being signed yet, but I think he even says even more about your draft if you sign him, then nobody knows where you're going in the draft because they're like, well, they're shoring up their line left and right here. So, Dan, what do you think about LaAdrian Waddle?
And so it's funny you say that because I was absolutely pumped when we signed him. But then unfortunately that injury ended up happening. I think that changes everything. I really think that he would be able to fit in that hole and be able to solve a lot of issues. But I mean, I'm not sure whether or not that Beane will be able to shell out some cash. I mean, I'm sure that Waddle understands that he was out the entire season. I'm sure that we could probably get him on a very affordable deal. But I mean, I would be absolutely fine with that. And I think that we would be able to accomplish sort of that movement and stuff like that and sort of solidify that O-line.
Joe, what do you think?
So I think, and I'm going to kick it back to you guys too, what you guys think about this. I think the longer Waddle is a free agent, the better that is that he's going to come back to Buffalo. I think that the fact that he hasn't been signed by another team, that means that no teams are going after him. I have a funny feeling that the Buffalo Bills and Brandon Beane aren't interested. They're just still kind of feeling everything out right now. And you know what? One of the bad things that this quarantine has done is other medical staffs cannot check out LaAdrian Waddle's health history to see how he's feeling right now. The Buffalo Bills know exactly how LaAdrian Waddle is doing right now because their medical staff was the last one to see him. Other teams can't do that because of this whole we can't hang out with each other anymore. We have to do live streams. So so I think the Buffalo Bills have an edge because they know how healthy he is or isn't. And B, I think the longer it goes without him being signed, that helps the Buffalo Bills' chances to re-sign him.
Yeah, the thing that I always harken back to, and Hashtag Nation has heard me say it a million times already, the Buffalo Bills, when he got injured last year, they could have released him with an injury settlement and they could have been fine. They could have, they didn't. They held on to him the entire year. It was IR, not designated to return. So that's the path they decided to go. So I think they saw something in him. And like someone said in the chat, it says rumor is Tampa Bay is trying to get that was about AB, but Below Zero. He said Waddle played with Brady, so we better grab him before Tampa Bay gets him, which I understand that completely. I mean, they need tackle help down there in Tampa Bay to keep that 44-year-old statue upright. But the point is, that's the only team that I fear might sign him. But and I'm going to kick this to Dan in 1 second. A lot of people don't want Waddle signed because of his wife.
Oh God.
Now, listen, I'm not going to talk very long about this because I can't get behind that logic where some wife's social media presence deters you from signing a player. I just think that's kind of goofy. But we're talking about social media. We're talking about certain things. I want to kick this over to you, and I'm going to mention 2 words: Cam Newton. Now, what is the overwhelming social media things that you've gotten? Because I know what I think. I know what Joe thinks. What do you think about? Can we just put this to bed right now? Let's just go ahead, put Cam Newton to bed right now.
Okay, so I know a lot of you have been in our comments section recently saying, yo, we should totally sign Cam Newton. I'm going to have to say that's going to be a big old negative, Chief. For one reason, actually for 2 reasons. Number one, it doesn't make sense to pay a backup quarterback more money than your starting quarterback. And then number 2, once you get to the point of Josh Allen's development right now, if you bring in somebody like Cam Newton, that is just going to destroy his confidence and completely ruin the locker room and completely ruin the efficiency of what this offense is about to be in 2020.
Joe, what do you got,
Hands
buddy?
down.
I agree with that. Joe, what do you got?
I believe it was Elliot. I'm watching the chat here as we're doing this. I think it was Elliot in here who was the first to bring up Cam Newton and said little rant. So if you want a little rant, welcome to the show because I'm about to give you one.
I'm sitting back for this one.
Why would you want Cam Newton? Dan, you're 100% correct. There are so many reasons why Cam Newton to the Buffalo Bills does not make sense. When did we see Josh Allen improve the most? When we brought in Derek Anderson. We need a quarterback that's willing to teach a young man how to grow as a quarterback. Does Cam Newton and Josh Allen have the same skill set? About so, whatever. Yeah, maybe. But Cam Newton still wants to be a starting quarterback. He believes that he's still a starting quarterback. And remember, he was an MVP of this league not that long ago. So maybe he deserves the shot to be a starting quarterback. I agree with everything Dan said. The moment you bring Cam Newton into Buffalo, no matter if Coach McDermott and Brandon Beane say, Josh Allen, you're still the guy, perception is reality. So if you bring in Cam Newton and you have NFL.com already saying he's a top 5, Buffalo's a top 5 landing spot for Cam Newton. You have ESPN saying, oh, it's a good fit. You bring him in, then, yeah, exactly what Dan said. No matter what Coach McDermott and Brandon Beane tell Josh Allen, he hears the media. He knows what they're saying. Some of the guys in the locker room, if Josh Allen starts to struggle, whether it's in preseason or early on in the regular season, oh, well, we got this former MVP as a backup. No, you don't want any of that. Give me a veteran who can teach Josh Allen what he needs to do to improve, and give me a guy that is okay with that backup position. Don't give me a guy like Cam Newton. I love Cam Newton. I think he's a great quarterback in the NFL. But you got to be shitting me if you think that Cam Newton should be the backup quarterback in the NFL or to the Buffalo Bills. I'm sorry. I just think that's absolutely insane, guys. And I know there's a lot of you who might have offended by saying all that, but it's just the truth. And you know what? If Cam Newton comes to Buffalo, expect a rant video.
Oh yeah, for sure.
PG-13 Joe just crossed over to Mitchell's land.
Yeah. Listen, my land's good, baby.
Yes, that's true.
I'm not quite there, man.
Hey, Joe, listen, you just crossed over to the dark side. You're not going back, baby.
He just visited Don Mafiaville. I just think he did. Okay, so before I get to my response, let me go to the chat real quick. Apex, no. Below Zero, hell no. Chris Spencer, no. Elliot, no. All these guys. Alan Strang, he goes, with all those goofy hats, no. Steve Hampton, rumors like this is why I don't use Twitter, Facebook, etc. Apex is minus. That's a Texas size no. I mean, everyone's going. Oh
good.
My God.
Good. Absolutely.
Daniel Gary's Joe said the S word. Oh my God. Cam saw.
Joe said the S word. Oh my God.
That's as far as he went. Preach, Joe. Preach from Daniel Gary's as well. So it's.
That was fire shit right there, Joe. I love that.
That was amazing. I might have to.
I felt that in my soul.
The fact is that I saw a meme today that said, it's over, guys. Cam already signed. It said he signed They showed him with one of his post-game press conference garbs, and he said that he signed a 2-year deal with Mary Kay. And I couldn't stop laughing. It was just cracking me up so much. So Cam Newton, because initially, you guys remember this. You guys remember this as well as I do. When Josh Allen came, everyone was talking about the Carolina connection. He was a mobile quarterback. He was running around, diving all over the place. People compared him to Cam Newton initially, of what kind of quarterback he was. And I think if I could try to gauge some logic of why people think that Cam Newton would be a good idea, is because they think that he could, quote unquote, mentor Josh Allen. And I don't think that's the type of player that Cam is, and I don't think he's at that point in his career right now. That's the professional answer that I want to give you. The other answer is who this guy is. That we've seen, the image of Cam Newton that we've seen, no one really talks very good about him. No one really says he's a we guy. Everyone says he's a me guy. So that being said, I think it would disrupt the culture of the team that you've tried to build so far. And I think that Bean thinks that the locker room is strong enough, because you got to realize they brought in Butler, they brought in Jefferson. Almost went into a crowd to get a fan. Butler punched Jack Doyle in the face and got kicked out of a game. They brought in some guys that have some nastiness to them now. You got Josh Norman, who's his fights with OBJ are well chronicled, and everything. So from that aspect, I don't think it's a good idea to bring Cam Newton in from a logistic standpoint, even though Josh Allen has been compared to Cam Newton in the past. Like, I understand that, but I just don't think it's a good idea to bring him in here. Plus, I mean, for what Dan said, you're going to be paying him more. For Joe using the S word, congratulations. I appreciate you. But I just don't see that at all. I just don't. It just does not make one bit of sense to me for him.
It's funny to hear a woman talking about routes. Let's not forget that was something he said 3 years ago. So I'm just reminding people.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Oh, yeah, dude. That was something that got into it. It's funny because I was actually scrolling through the chat, too, because obviously, there's been a lot of chatter right around sort of the Bills community about backup quarterback. A lot of people don't have faith in Matt Barkley. I'm not saying that I have faith in Matt Barkley, but if Josh Allen were to go down, I'm not saying that I have faith in Matt Barkley to be able to, make it happen.
Yep.
So I feel like this is becoming a new conversation, can Matt Barkley get it done? God forbid Josh Allen goes down sometime in the 2020 season. And somebody said, what about Andy Dalton?
I'm going to say not hateful. I'm going to say...
Yeah, I would... If you're going Andy Dalton or Cam Newton, I'm taking Andy Dalton.
A classic line is this. A classic line is this. The most popular guy in town is the backup quarterback. Mm-hmm. Always. Okay?
For sure.
Andy Dalton, given what he did in 2017, breaking the drought, with that pass, he would be the most popular guy in town if he came to Buffalo. I understand that. Yeah. I don't think he poses a threat to Josh Allen. I think he may be better in that mold of being a mentor, quarterback, professional, because I hear nothing but good things about Andy Dalton and what he does. I don't know if that's the route that he wants to take. Andy Dalton could be a guy that goes out to I want to say San Diego, could go out to LA. I mean, there's still some quarterback jobs that are open. I like the idea of Andy Dalton. I just don't know if he feels he's at that point in his career where he's like, listen, all right, I'll be a backup, I'll be a mentor. But if you're gauging your team based on, well, what if Allen goes down? Well, you got Diggs, so he can get the ball out of his hands faster.
Yeah.
So you're already doing it. But how well put together is this team if you're worried about the backup quarterback playing a few games? How put together is this team now? You know what I mean?
For sure. And so a Dalton or maybe even a Joe Flacco. Like, I honestly would want Joe Flacco over Dalton as well, because I know Dalton is a little bit more like, you bring in a guy like Flacco right as a backup quarterback, like Josh Allen's not, like, his confidence will not be destroyed at all. It's fucking Joe Flacco. But I would pick Flacco over Barkley any day of the week.
Really?
For a backup quarterback.
Wow.
That's close to me.
100%.
That's close to me.
Wow.
100%.
I don't know how I feel about Joe Frankenstein. I don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
And so what does Hashtag Nation feel about me? Would you rather Joe Flacco or Matt Barkley taking over for Allen if he were to get hurt?
I like it. All right. We're gonna go one with Flacco.
No Flacco.
We're gonna go
no
one Flacco. All right, type this in the chat. Type 1 if you would rather have Flacco, 2 if you would rather have Barkley. And Joe, go to your point, bud. What were you gonna say about it?
I forget. No. See, what I like about Flacco over Dalton is with what Flacco just did in Denver, he already has that mindset of, okay, I'm at that point in my career where I'm a good backup quarterback that needs to tutor, mentor, the starting quarterback. So that's, I think, if Mario, you talk about, does Andy Dalton think he's there yet? Flacco knows he's there, or at least he should, because that's what he's been for the past 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
So, that would be the plus from Flacco over Dalton. But let's just hope that Josh Allen doesn't get hurt.
So because 17 games, that doesn't start till 2021?
Right.
Okay, right. But the extra playoff game starts in 2020.
Right.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So Josh Allen, he's going to be a healthy stud for 16 games plus.
Yeah.
Once we go for the Super Bowl in 2020, baby.
Oh my God. I don't think Buffalo's prepared for that. I'm not really sure. Elliot Eisler, thank you. He said 4 for Mario because I said put 1 in for Flacco, 2 in for Barkley. He gave me a 4. He said put 4 in if you want me to be the backup quarterback.
Who's 3?
Dalton.
I'm not really sure. Dalton was
3 was Dalton.
3 was Dalton. I wouldn't. I wouldn't be against any of those guys. Flacco, because he has moved teams and has been relegated to a backup role already. Dalton really hasn't. Dalton really hasn't. He's played spot duty, this and that, but he's always been a starter. He's always been in one city. I mean, that's where he raised his family. So guys just. I think sometimes we downplay. Some of us that play Madden, we're like, oh, trade him, go here. But these are families that are moving and relocating different places. But I mean, to me, I've been to Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Buffalo. To me, as far as their fan bases are concerned, they're very similar in how much they love their teams and the blue collar, hardworking individuals that they are. I mean, from my point of view, I know this may not be anybody else's. I hope I don't offend anybody, but my point is I don't know if Cincy is the same way. I don't know if Cincinnati is. And if you're from Cincinnati, I apologize ahead of time. I'm not really sure, but I know those cities that if a player had to move from Pittsburgh to Buffalo or move from Cleveland to Buffalo, they would see the same type of individual that are very passionate about their football team and who like to give back to their community. So, I don't know how Dalton would take that transition up to Buffalo as far as a backup role. I'm sure he'd welcome it because he still has a job, but I'm not really sure how. This guy's got to uproot his whole family. He's been in Cincinnati for 9 years. 10 years? Yeah. How long has he been there? So, Kurt Lewis says, the Rust Belt, baby. That's what he talks about. Chuck Christopher says, Winston's better than all of them. Winston?
Yeah, but like with Winston, that's like the exact same thing as Cam Newton. Like, he's going to request a shit ton of fucking money. He's not going to want to go to a team that he's going to be a backup quarterback. He wants to be a starting quarterback. And then he's also another quarterback that is going to ruin Josh Allen's confidence. Same exact thing as Cam Newton.
I mean, I like Winston. However, I don't.
So do I.
I don't like the. McDermott's a defensive head coach.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing that those guys like are turnovers, where you put your defense in a bind. And I don't care if he had LASIK surgery. You had 30 picks last year, okay? You were the only quarterback to go 30
He'll be down
for
to
30.
19 next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he'll also be down to 15 touchdowns, though, is the problem.
Yeah.
Winston had the most ridiculous wide receivers, and he threw 30 picks. So I don't know about that.
Yeah, and two
There's no quality crab legs in Western New York.
This is why the nation loves
Chuck, I would say, like, we're not saying that Winston or Newton aren't better than Flacco or Dalton. We think they are better than Flacco or Dalton. That's why we don't think they belong in a backup quarterback conversation. We think that Dalton and Flacco belong.
They always have to fit. I mean, we talk about systems all the time. I mean, you watch Dan's channel, you watch Joe's channel, you watch #Nation. We're always talking about systems. Does this guy fit in this system? Well, Bills fans have been clamoring for a 6'2", 6'3" wide receiver, a big, huge guy that can go up and get the ball. Well, you know what? The EP system that's running Buffalo isn't predicated on a big, huge guy. It's predicated on route running, getting in and out of cuts, concept routes, combination routes, all this other stuff. Diggs is probably the most concise, ridiculous route runner that's in the NFL right now. So Stephon Diggs will naturally open up things like what was the percentage? I think the percentage was, if I can remember it, I think it was like around 70% last year. The Buffalo Bills were in 11 personnel, and if you don't know what that is, 1 tight end, 1 running back, 3 wide receivers. You now go into the season. I know Bills fans, #Nation, you guys have said this to yourself, smiling. Hopefully, you've said this to yourself, where you're saying, "Hey, we got Diggs on one side, Knox, Beasley, and Brown, Singletary in the backfield. Who on earth are you going to shift coverage toward? Because you're going to make a bad decision every time. You know what I mean? And you're starting to see teams in the East, at least, they're starting to try to adjust. How many cornerbacks can the New York Jets sign in the next 10 days? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're starting to see. Let me go start with Dan, and I'll go over to Joe. Dan, what is your prediction? I know it's really early, and we'll probably do a bunch of different things like this throughout the season. I understand that. Yep. You can give numbers. You can give whatever you want. What is your prediction now that you take Stephon Diggs and you put it in this offense? What is your prediction for 2020 for this team?
Are you talking about a record, or are you talking about division standings?
Like I said, the floor is yours, man. You know how this goes. You can go record, you can go yardage, you can go touchdowns, you can go a bunch of this other stuff. I'm so curious about the possibility of this offense.
So this is a very intriguing take. While I think that Stephon Diggs is going to have 1,000-yard season, I do believe that. I think that John Brown is going to have more yards than Stephon Diggs this year.
Ooh.
Why, you might ask? Because Stephon Diggs, defenses are going to be so consumed with doubling Diggs for at least half the season that it's going to be able to open up John Brown. And then Cole Beasley is also going to have an amazing season itself. We are going to see an offense from the Buffalo Bills in 2020 that we have not seen since the 90s. And I will put whatever you want me to put down for collateral, I believe that. And I am so excited for Bills fans to finally be able to see this. Don't expect, but know that we are going to win the AFC East this year. We are going to win the AFC East this year. That is hands down. We are going to see the New England Patriots finish in 3rd place, which is going to be even sweeter. Even sweeter than us winning the AFC East. And then I see the Dolphins finishing up in 2nd place with maybe a 9-7 record, and the Jets finishing out in the basement.
Ooh, dropping the Jets down like that much. Oh boy.
Yeah, dude. As soon as they have Adam Gase in that room, dude, they're just a lost cause.
You know what though? Honestly, just for me, I'll give it to Joe. I think Darnold overrides Gase. I really think he does. I think he's that talented of a kid to override Gase's before the game. You know what I mean? He's a lunatic.
Yeah.
So Joe, what do you have?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And so it's funny too, because Jack Patrick actually just ended up putting in this comment. He says, we have to win the AFC East with this schedule. This is funny because you do need to realize that our entire division is also playing the NFC West. They have a very similar strength of schedule to us, our entire division. So that's why I'm not worried about it whatsoever. So whether or not that we go 10-6 or whether or not that we go 11-5, blah, 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 we're going to win the division because our team is stacked up to be able to come out with the best record against that strength of schedule.
Talk to me, Joe.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say something. You were talking about the roster and the wide receivers and who are you going to guard, and it brought this thought into my head, and it's about a guy that we just re-signed. The Buffalo Bills just re-signed 2 days ago. Can you imagine Stephon Diggs and Isaiah McKenzie on the same field at the same time? One running a jet sweep, one doing whatever the hell he wants to do, and who are you going to guard? Like you said, who are you going to guard? And I like what Dan said. And to reiterate Dan's point about strength of schedule, the Buffalo Bills have the 5th hardest strength of schedule going into 2020. The Jets, Patriots, and Dolphins are 1, 2, and 4 on that list. So out of the strength of schedule, we in our division, we actually have the easiest. So remember that, guys. And that's one of the reasons why we definitely need to win this division. I am going to. I just did a video, and I'm going to plug myself, Mario, on your channel. So I do apologize.
Let's go.
On Monday, I always do a "Could It Happen" Buffalo sports video. So if you guys haven't checked out, check out. This past Monday, I did a video and asked myself, could Stephon Diggs have the best single season in Buffalo Bills history? And I compared the potential for this team to the 2002 Buffalo Bills. In 2002, we had Eric Moulds have 100 receptions, which is currently the lead in Buffalo Bills history. Phyllis Price had 94. So that's the type of offense I think we can have. We could have Stephon Diggs get over 1,300 yards, have 80, 90 receptions, and John Brown could still do the same thing. I think that is very much potential. The only thing stopping that is the fact that we have Cole Beasley. We have extra weapons. So last year you had John Brown with 72 catches, Cole Beasley with 67. So we have a lot of weapons. I think this offense could do something like that. Again, like Dan said, I've been saying this for a year now, and I think you guys have too. This year, I expect the Buffalo Bills, and we should win that AFC East. And I was saying that when I thought the Patriots would still have Tom Brady. This is our year. This is going to be our time. And I don't think anything's stopping us from doing that. If you want some stats for me, I think Devin Singletary gets over 1,200 yards all-purpose this season. I think he's going to have a good year. And I think that the Buffalo Bills finish in the top 7 in offensive production and still in the top 5 in defense.
Oh, boy. Well, piece of candy. I don't even know. Let's just put it this way. I think the defense will remain a very top-tier defense. However, they're playing a much different schedule this year than they did last year. So I don't want Bills fans to completely panic when they're actually facing top-tier solid quarterbacks this year. They're playing the AFC West, NFC West. Okay? We know who's in those divisions. You know, we're talking about Russell Wilson. We're talking about Garoppolo. We're talking about Goff. We're talking about Kyler Murray. You know,
about Mahomes.
Mahomes. You're talking about we might see Tyrod Taylor again. You know what I mean? You're talking about we might see Derek Carr. You know,
he'll be benched by then.
Drew Lock might be under that point. My point is this: naming the quarterbacks here and there. It's a much tougher schedule this year on paper right now than the Bills faced last year. So Paul and I were actually talking about it, and it was an episode that never aired, but we were talking about 9-7 could conceivably win this division for the Buffalo Bills. And that is because that, just to Dan's point, you're still playing. They're playing all the West teams too, you know. So what you have to do, the key is to try to take care of your house. You got to take care of the division first. The Bills could conceivably go 5-1 in the division, win the division, going 9-7, and still make the playoffs. I can understand that. To the point of the Patriots, it's finally time for the Bills to take over the division because Tom Brady's out of it. Tom Brady's been on a decline. And, you know, I mean, I think last year completely exemplified the decline that he was on. So if he stayed with the Patriots, I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried because you saw the production. If you go over the last 2 seasons of Brady's stats against the Bills, McDermott figured him out to a point. Him and Frazier figured him out to a point. So I wasn't worried about Brady being in the division. You know what I mean? So that being said, if we want to go just strictly on numbers, as Joe said, John Brown, 72 catches, 1,060 yards. You talk about Cole Beasley, 67 catches, 778. The next guy on that list was Dawson Knox, 28 catches, 388 yards. So you bring in a Cole Beasley, all right? You think the maturity of Devin Singletary, and you bring in Stephon Diggs, targets are going to be taken away. I mean, John Brown had 115 targets. You got to think at least. And what did Cole Beasley have? Cole Beasley had 106. So you got to think that probably 20 to 30 of those targets that they had are going to go to Diggs, as far as Knox is too. So I don't know if we're having, I'd love to be optimistic and say, hey, we're going to have, two guys that have 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and Beasley's going to catch 70, 78 passes over the middle, and Dawson Knox is going to have 50 catches, and Singletary and all this other stuff. McDermott's a defensive head coach. He wants to run with Singletary. But he wants to preserve him for the playoffs. So I can get behind the 1,200-yard all-purpose yards. You know what I mean? Because I think he's going to catch some passes out of the backfield. I think he's going to be great. Someone brought up in the chat CJ Procise. Actually bringing him in place of Yeldon, because you do run a lot of those 5 wide sets, and why not have a receiving back out there? It'd be great. He used to be a wide receiver. But as far as for the Bills themselves, I think they repeat their 10-6 season that they did this past season. They win the division because they're playing a nasty schedule. Right. But this 10-6 that they're going to have, two things. One is going to be more impressive than the 10-6 they had last year in 2019. And it's all hinged on number 17. How much did this kid grow? Because now, for Dable and Allen, there's no excuses. You have nothing left to blame it on. Because, listen, we got you all these shiny toys now. What could you do, kid? Let's see what you can do. And I think a lot of the questions are going to be answered this season, because by the third season of a quarterback's career, you have to figure out whether or not you're going to sign that kid. You know what I mean? Because you're going to end up having to give him a big contract, and you're going to let some of these other guys go by the wayside. That's the tough part. I think that's the biggest. That can be the biggest part.
And if you don't come to that decision, you have a Dak Prescott situation, and you don't want that in Buffalo.
Oh God, Dak Prescott. Could anyone mismanage a team more than Jerry Jones though?
No. And to your point, Mario, you were talking about quarterbacks. Also think about the defenses in the NFC West, and that might be why some of the offensive production's a little less than playing, the schedule we had last year as well.
Very true. All right. What else you guys got? You guys want to plug some stuff on your channels? Dan, what do you got coming up for the Don Mafia?
What do I have coming up for the Don Mafia?
Besides that Monet painting behind you that you decided to show everybody when you took
that Monet.
Went to the bathroom.
Monet. Well, so spoiler alert, it is not a Monet.
You would be breaking in your house tonight, man.
Yeah.
I gotta go watch Ocean's 11 now.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, I am definitely going to be trying to put out as many videos as possible. I did take a page out of #Nation's book and Joe's book. I started live streaming. Surprising.
Yes.
I did. I popped my cherry. I was nervous about it at first.
Jesus.
But so the Don Mafia hooked it up. They definitely made me sort of make that process go smoothly. So I'm going to start doing live streams 6 p.m. Fridays each week.
I'm sorry.
Maybe like a Q&A or some bullshit. So
Man, I'm sorry. Jack Patrick came in. I'll plug it again. Jack Patrick goes, that's a bidet, not a Monet.
That's a bidet. Yo.
Oh my God. So 6 p.m. Fridays, you're going to be doing live streams? During the
6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
During the queue?
Fridays. Q's and A's. And then maybe I'll have you boys on. Like, maybe like one or two, sort of how I figure out how to use OBS and shit.
Hey, once you figure it out, let me know, because you guys been sitting at my house all these times for the Avengers.
You're right. It's about time for me to
Absolutely.
So it's about time for me and Joe to return the favor. For sure.
I like you guys doing the hard work. Are you kidding me? Come on, this is easy. I just sit here and talk Buffalo sports, whatever.
You can sit and drink all day, Joe.
Yeah, I sit and drink all day. Guys, subscribe to my channel, but watch everyone else's. I don't care.
Crazy stuff. Joe, what do you got coming up on Believers Talk, buddy?
Well, listen, guys. I mean, you know how I do things by now. You know, every Buffalo Bills free agent signing, I got you up to date. So, if it's Isaiah McKenzie, I did a video today on the Patrick DeMarco re-signing. So it's big or small, got you covered there. If we sign Cam Newton, you can expect 3 rants from 3 YouTube channels sitting right here. So be ready for that. And I'll just keep you updated on those things. Every Monday, I got the Could It Happen videos coming out. So each Monday we do a topic. So we always have fun. So you can always expect that. And then tomorrow, Thursday, don't forget Thursday live stream with Believers Talk. So I'll be there.
Oh, I love it. Elliot Eisler has a very special request for you in the chat.
For me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have the chat open?
I do have the chat open, but can I see Elliot's?
It's the most reason.
You just want Elliot. Stay tuned. If you want another rant, again, if we sign Cam Newton, I might be saying shit. I might be like whispering into Dan's ear to say some things for me. So
You're right.
He'll definitely do that. And ladies and gentlemen, hashtag Nation. It's I just figured out it was Wednesday because I've been in quarantine. I don't know what day it is, but Paul and I will have brand new episodes for you guys coming out this weekend. We're gonna film them on Saturday. We're not practicing social distancing, but we are taking all the necessary precautions. As you know, Paul had he quarantined himself because his son was born prior to all this chaos going on. So he's been at home quarantined already. So he's been taking necessary precautions. So have I. Everything's going to be good. We're going to have new fresh episodes for you coming next week. Be sure to follow Joe and Dan on their channels. I'm sure you guys do it already. Be sure to hit that like button so all this can go out to all the Bills fans all over the world. From Joe and Dan, I'm Mario. Thanks for riding, guys. Take it easy.
Deuces.